All right, so let's finally talk about Black Widow, the movie from Marvel, the first of the Phase Four movies, and a movie that is long time due. I mean, Scarlett Johansson and Black Widow as that character has been kind of a character that's evolved and a really kind of big piece of the Marvel Cinematic Universe for a long time. It probably would have been much better had that movie actually come out in where it was in the timeline because it's kind of set in between Civil War and Infinity War. But it also kind of added to Infinity War having it come out later because we really didn't know where Black Widow was in between. Now, where do I think this movie kind of fits in the Marvel universe? I think to me it's not in the worst group, so it's not Thor Dark World bad. But it's in the group that's just above that. It's not anywhere near the top tier. And the reason is that I think that there's a couple things that I had issues with. Number one, though, I love the characters here. I think the character work is great. I think Florence Pugh as Yelena is great. I think David Harbour as the Red Guardian is great. But David Harbour didn't have enough to do, and Florence Pugh, in some ways, didn't either. And I think where I really struggled with this movie, as far as putting it up there with the bigger part of the Marvel Universe, is that really to care about the story, you have to care more about Black Widow avenging her past. There's no real person or identity to really kind of lock onto as a villain. So it's about her kind of going and ending the Red Room, and so there is the guy who kind of runs the Red Room as the supervillain, but you don't really see him and get to interact with him. You kind of see him existentially till they kind of confront him. The villain before that is Taskmaster, who is this really cool villain from the comics who can actually mimic other people, who can mimic other fighting styles, but really doesn't have a whole lot to do. And it's kind of a shame they use that villain in that way because that villain could be a great villain further on. The other piece that I really struggled with this movie is that I struggle with very obvious CGI movies. And the fact that this movie, which is somewhat based in reality, has more obvious CGI than, say, Guardians of the Galaxy, which is just kind of way out there. I mean, even to a point that the movie, this looks more like computer generated graphics than. This looks more like computer generated graphics than Ego's planet, which was very obvious that way. I really struggled with. And part of it is you get to the end where they have this big battle where like the Red Room is exploding in the sky. Spoiler, it's actually in the sky, and it's actually exploding around them. And I go, why did they have it explode around them? You could have had much more kind of heartfelt moments, and you didn't need that. You didn't need the explosion of the ship, like, and just falling apart all around them because it makes it look silly. So I think as a movie, this one, like I said, is kind of in the middle of the Marvel pack, the low middle for me. It's not, it doesn't, I don't care, the story I didn't care about as much as some of the other movies that are out there. And then it also just didn't have the same heart or humor that a movie like Ragnarok or The Guardians have. So it's not kind of it's not the early Avengers bad, like Thor: The Dark World, but it's not better. It's not up there with Winter Soldier. It's not up there with Ragnarok. It's not up there with the Guardians movies or some of the Avengers movies. And yeah, and I think that, and really, I would put this probably ahead of Captain Marvel, simply because I care more about the characters here. Like the characters, Yelena's great and Red Guardian's great. Where the characters in Captain Marvel honestly bored me a little bit. So that's kind of probably why I would put it ahead of that. So that's kind of my take on Black Widow. Hope you enjoyed.